Hi, we've learned how to label each box of our Punnet square, so let's fill in the resulting genotypes. In our final project, we want the genotypes to be printed inside each of the 4 center boxes by printing the allele value on top with the allele value on the left. We're going to need to learn a few more things before being able to complete this task, so let's jump right in. You may have noticed this piece of code written at the top of all of our programs. Let's go through the different parts of this code. On lines 5 through 7, you'll see some lines of text that are green and all start with a hash symbol. These are called comments. They describe the code so that someone reading through it will understand what is happening or why you made a certain decision. To write a comment, simply type a hash symbol and then write your information next to it in your natural language. If the text turns green, you've done it correctly, and anything you write will be ignored by the computer. Lines 8 through 10 are defining a new function. In our programs, we've been using the command writeText to print text to the screen. What that command is doing is actually calling this function, which is setting the color of the text based on what we've selected, and then using the more complicated command shown on line 10 to print the text we entered to our canvas. We can make as many functions as we want and use them throughout our code, which we will do in just a bit. But for now, just remember that to define a function, we need to use the word def and then write the name of the function. Some rules to remember when naming functions are that function names can include underscores but not spaces, cannot start the name with a number, and should start with a lowercase letter, similar to how we name variables. Now in line 8, you can see that there are some variables included inside the parentheses. These are called parameters and are a way to give the function information that can be used during the function implementation. For example, this first parameter named text is being used later in the code to print the text we've given in the function. The second parameter, text color, is being used inside the function to change the color of our text. Now, the third parameter looks a bit different. That's because it's being given a default value. This means that if we only give information about the text and the text color, as we have been doing, and forget to give information about the direction, the function will default to putting the text in the center. This is the same for our last parameter, named size. If we don't include a size value, it will default to a text size of 40. But including size as a parameter still gives us the option to choose another value if we want to make our font size smaller or larger. Let's take a look at using all these parameters in our program. If we wrote writeText and used Tracy and red inside my parentheses, we would see Tracy write her name centered above her in red at the size we're used to. Now, if we altered our command to include a direction of left and a size of 50, we would then see that Tracy is located to the left of her name and the text is a little bigger than previous. Similarly, if we altered our command to include a direction of right and a size of 20, we would then see that Tracy is located to the right of her name and the text is much smaller. Also, it is important to note that not all default parameters must be given, but they do need to go in order. For example, if we wanted to change the direction of the text, but wanted to keep the size at the default value of 40, we don't need to write a value in for our font size, and we will see Tracy make only the alterations we've told her to. But we cannot enter a value for font size without also including a direction, because parameters need to be given in order. So if we typed in 60 without a direction first, Tracy would become confused because 60 is not a valid input for direction, and the program would not continue. Let's go to the editor to put this all together and write a title for a Punnet square generator. I want to fill in this function that will print a title to my Punnet square generator. I want the title to be centered at the top of my canvas, so I'll send Tracy there by using setPosition 0, 170. I need to make sure that all of the commands I want included in this function are indented one level. Once she's there, I want her to print the title, so I'll use the writeText function, and I'll write Punnet square for allele 1 and allele 2. And let's make that black. Let's see how that looks. My title isn't showing up. Well, I made the function, but I never actually called it in my program, so it's just sitting here without being used. I want the title to come up after my allele names are placed, so after that, I'll write print title, just as I did before for write text. There's no parameters, so my parentheses are empty. Let's see how this looks. The positioning's good, but I do see some other errors. First off, the text is way too big to fit on the screen, so let's change the size parameter to a smaller value. In order to do this, though, I need to keep the order of parameters, so I need to first indicate the direction of the text. I want it to still be centered, so I'll write that, and then I'll choose a size that's much smaller. Let's say 18. Let's see how it looks. That looks better. I also want the title to be customized based on the values the user entered for allele 1 and allele 2. So let's include some parameters in our function. I'll have this function take 2 parameters. Let's call them first and second. I want to use these parameters in place of allele 1 and allele 2 in my title, so I'll write them here. Now, in order to test our updated function, I need to include parameter values, which are called arguments, that are given to the function. I want the information the user entered into my print title function, so I'll write allele 1 and allele 2 here. Let's see how this works. Now, why didn't the values the user entered print out? Well, I just typed the variable names into my title text, and this means the information stored in my variable is not being used. I need to make sure the variable name is not enclosed by quotation marks in order to use the information stored inside. So I need to use something called concatenation. To concatenate strings with variables, we use addition signs between the string, which is written inside quotation marks, and the variable name, which is not surrounded by quotation marks. We can add as many strings and variables as we want in one line of text, simply by putting addition signs between each string and variable. Let's add this into our code. So inside the text I want to print, instead of keeping my variable names inside the quotation marks, I'll close the quotation mark after the word for, keeping the space there, and add an addition sign, and then add an addition sign and open quotation marks after my variable name. I'll do the same thing after and delete these last quotation marks. Let's see how it looks. Awesome! Now it's your turn. Fill in the commands for the new function called determine genotype so that it can be used to print the genotypes of each allele pair.